How's it going? Welcome back to another great video with your host, The Savior, and oh yes, I'm excited today because we can talk about Hyper Light Breaker, the prequel to Hyper Light Drifter, okay? Hyper Light Breaker actually is a very different type of game, and basically today I'm going to be giving you my Hyper Light Breaker early access review, for Hyper Light Breaker review, based on all of the playtesting and stuff from events and all that stuff. Bear in mind this is an early access review and I have not played the full version of the game as of yet. But to be honest, this game looks very interesting to me, and at times it even has a kind of relaxing flow state to it, okay? I'm not going to pretend that this is Breath of the Wild or something like that, okay? This is quite frantic with its combat. It's actually very skill-based, just like the first game was, but even more complicated. But it does still have that nice zen approach when you are just gliding through the open world environments, the art style, and yeah, it just has a nice gameplay flow to it. But honestly, this game is rather repetitive from what I've actually seen. Obviously, the full version will, rectify some of these issues, but I just want to talk about what you will be getting with the early access. So I do hope you enjoy this Hyper Light Breaker early access review. And if those words early access and roguelike don't get you excited, and you don't jump up from your seat right now and start praising the Lord of gaming, the God of gaming, for giving us these fantastic genres, then this game is not going to be for you. But because if you're like me and you hear those words, you are going to be a little bit skeptical. And I think that's fair enough considering the landscape of modern day gaming and how early access titles in the last decade or so have basically been either complete cash grabs or just complete broken games, to be honest, that never get finished, or actual cons, literal cons.
Modern gaming. It's like modern gaming kind of fucking sucks.
And even if those things don't happen and you get a good early access title that actually gets finished or works towards being finished, something like Witchfire, which I'll talk about in a different video, I absolutely love that game, but they do happen. And they do exist, but even when you do get proper games that get out of early access and stuff like that, they aren't always the most original, they aren't always the most creative with its gameplay. So yeah, so it's understandable if you hear those two things and you're off-put, but actually bear in mind that this game is quite different, okay? And what it's got cooking so far actually intrigues me a lot, especially with the boss gameplay and all of the different systems on offer here. And if you like games like Risk of Rain or a more Souls shooter like Remnant from the Ashes, for example, I think you'll like this game because it's a weird blend of a lot of different games, but in a roguelike setting. But yeah, just because it's early access, don't write it off completely. So if you like a game with a pretty art style, a unique art style, I would say, it's left the previous art style from the previous game, which a lot of people are kind of upset about, which I understand. The pixel art in that game would have been cool to see in 3D, to be honest, because that hasn't really been done, but it would have been difficult, so it kind of went for the Zelda Breath of the Wild type art style. It's not bad, but it's not as standout as the pixel art they had in the first game. Also, Hyper Light Breaker is different because it does actually play with the day and night cycle. It's not just a feature. Like in most games, it actually adds to the gameplay, mechanically speaking. Think of Dragon's Dogma and games like that, where day and night cycle does actually matter, which I really like. And I think the new Elden Ring is going to do something like that as well. But still, I do like to see that feature in gaming when it actually becomes a gameplay mechanic. Not enough games do that. So we're going to get into the positives and negatives now, like I do with all of my early access reviews. I do hope you enjoy this Hyper Light Breaker review, this Hyper Light Breaker early access review. So I do hope you enjoy this video. Make sure that you do subscribe to the channel right now. It would mean a very great deal to me if you did become a wise one. I want you to join this community. We need more like you to bring back gaming to the peak that it once was, and just to rescue media in general, because media in general is kind of nosediving as culture declines. It would just be an honor to have you join this community. I love doing OG YouTube, and I want to hear from you guys, so do subscribe. Let me know your opinions about this game and early access and roguelikes in the comments down below. And yeah, I love doing this. I love just having a conversation with you guys, doing YouTube for the sake of doing YouTube. I'm not here to try and build my way up so I can one day sell you the savior coin. I just do it because I love it. So do subscribe if you love video essays, yearly reviews, gaming analysis, and philosophical content. I blend them both together, philosophy and gaming, to give you something different. And the early access stuff, the early reviews, because we do need to talk about them, because we can't really trust what games are before they actually come out, because there's a lot of greedy practices in the gaming industry right now. So the first thing you need to know is there is still a decent amount of content on release with early access. The end goal, of course, is to fight the Abyss King, and to do that you need to basically destroy these kind of mini bosses, okay? And there's even more mini bosses, but the main mini bosses are called crowns, okay? And they are the kind of big bosses. And on release, I do think there is going to be 2 of them that I know of as of yet, and then they will slowly add it in with updates, similar to games like Witchfire and stuff like that. So there's a decent amount of content here, but the thing is, this is a randomly generated world, okay? This is using random generation, so this world is completely randomly generated. That is something you need to know going in. So if you don't like procedural generated games, then this is not going to be for you. And trust me, okay, I feel you. I know if you don't like them, you're not alone, okay? In a world driven by goddamn AI everywhere, which is just trying to condition humanity to being even more useless and domesticated than before, taking away all creativity as well, when it should be doing the opposite and just automating stuff. It's the same thing with gaming. I'm not a fan of it, and I will talk about that more later. I don't think it feels like AI slop. They did actually handcraft some of the maps, but still, I'm not a big fan of it. So the first positive of Hyperlight Breaker is the fact that there's plenty of build variation, okay? If you want to go in with a massive two-handed greatsword, you can do that. If you want to spec into, more of a quick pace playstyle, where you're, kind of dodging around with daggers and stuff like that, then you can also do that. Or if you want to focus more on your ranged abilities, but it's better that you actually mix and match, okay? That's what this gameplay is all about. It is a little bit Souls-esque, but much more action-focused. Like I said, you have these big abilities as well that you can pull off, like literally launching a massive cube just to crush the enemies, or set them on fire, or just to buff yourself. So there's plenty of different playstyles in this game, but it is much more of a traditional roguelike compared to something like Hades or, a roguelite, okay? This is actually trying to kind of go back into the original genre, which I do respect, but what that means basically is you won't be keeping all of your loot. You won't be constantly progressing, and once you've unlocked something, you've got it forever. When you go into a run, you basically do have to restart to a degree, but that is what makes the challenge fun. There is a way to keep some things, and I'll talk about that more later, but it is a little bit more traditional in that sense. And the action in this game, that's what really holds this game together, is the action just feels good. The way the enemies react to getting hit, how weighty and meaty it feels when you are slashing enemies down. The shooting is a little bit floaty, I've got to say, as of right now from what I've seen, but the actual melee combat is pretty good, and it just feels very fluid in motion. It has, of course, borrowed that Breath of the Wild traversal mechanic where you can glide around, which is a little bit, a lot of open world games are doing that, that's all I'll say, but it still does make for a fun time, and it does have, and I've got to say, Hyperlight Breaker does give me some PS2 vibes in a very good way. It reminds me a little bit of Jak and Daxter in some areas when you are gliding around on your hoverboard, and it just has that kind of aesthetic to it. I just wish they handcrafted all of these locations instead of them all being randomly generated, and there is problems with that in early access as well, which I'll talk about more with the bugs. But still, yeah, it's still pretty cool, just what they've done with this world, the art style and all that stuff. So that's the first positive, is just the amount of playstyles that you can have. There is a lot of variation here, and just the world in general is nice to, traverse and all that kind of stuff. And of course, as you progress, there are ways to unlock certain skills and stuff like that. So yeah, don't be thinking that there is no progression. There is obviously progression, but not in the traditional sense. So the next thing I want to highlight, another positive, there's a lot of positives in this game for an early access title, I believe. So I am a fan of it so far from what I've seen and everything, but basically the bosses here are pretty well designed, okay? I like bosses that don't just, stick to the traditional kind of Souls boss style, okay? And what I mean by that, these are very action-focused bosses, it does truly feel like an action game much more than, like a slower paced Soulsy game, even though it does borrow some elements, I guess you could say, but it is very much more of an action game, a hack and slash game, as well as some shooting and stuff like that. But the bosses, what I really like about them, and I think they did take some inspiration from Nier, to be honest, is they kind of mix the traditional boss attack patterns and different movesets as they get more and more of their health taken away, but also mixing in some bullet hell elements, okay? And I really do like that. It just makes it feel much more gamey, and like I said, that's why it reminds me of a PS2 type game in a good way, because when some of these bosses do these massive AoE attacks, you'll have to dodge and keep an eye out for so many things, ground slams, them just spitting out tons of these goddamn projectiles, so at times it does feel like a little bit of a bullet hell because you have to be dodging constantly with all of these different things, and I just like that type of gameplay, especially with the bosses. So now some negatives, okay, because I do need to be fair. So first of all, some bugs, okay, this is early access and I can't comment on all of them because like I said, I haven't actually played the full version, bear that in mind. I just want to be transparent with you guys with all of my early reviews. It is an early review, so bear that in mind. Based on everything that has been shown off and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this is obviously not the same game as the first one. It's a very different type of experience. That was much more basic and stripped back, but in a good way. And obviously it was a completely different type of genre to a degree, and the way the camera was, I just would have been cool if they kept some of the same elements. This is a prequel to that game, so it is set in the same universe, but it is a very different type of experience. So fans of the first game, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll like this game, okay? So just bear that in mind. Because we live in a day and age where developers seem to love to, I'll say it, okay, take shortcuts, okay? I understand it works in some games like Path of Exile and stuff like that. It can work, but to me, a lot of the time, it does feel like a shortcut. Ever since Minecraft, kind of popularized it, it just got more and more convenient. And it's not always bad, okay? Some games can still be, great with handcrafted elements. When you think of Starfield, though, and many other games that use procedural generation, it starts to wear thin, and it does start to feel a little bit AI generated. The world itself, they say it's all very lived in, but what I've actually seen gameplay wise, that's not really true, okay? There is a lot of empty, wasted space, lots of trash mobs just littered about, and sometimes it does feel rather stitched together, and there's even been reports that basically some of the meshes actually aren't, separating properly, and they're kind of blending together and even stopping progression. So I hope that gets ironed out, but yeah, just be aware of that. And sometimes it just breaks, okay, if you are heading towards a boss and stuff like that. It is early access, so do expect there to be quite a lot of bugs, but hopefully they will get ironed out before release. But I'm not sure about it because it is releasing in early access very soon. That's why I wanted to give you this hyper light Breaker early access review, because it is important to know what you're getting yourself into with early access games like this. So yeah, and that's the final negative to me. And the final negative to me is really just that the world itself doesn't really feel that interesting, okay? This isn't an exploration game when you're going to be coming across cool locations and wow, I really want to go and explore this. This is, go in there, get the job done, find the boss, and extract type experience, but there's obviously more to it than that. But just don't expect a deep exploration type game here. It's pretty to look at, but some of it just feels kind of cobbled together and a little bit lifeless, if you ask me. Also, this has to be in... Also, you really do need to think about this. A lot of games don't actually think about traversal elements. They add cool stuff like a hoverboard, and I want to see more of that in gaming, but then they don't think about how it actually interacts with the world. Because there are many times where you can just completely avoid enemies simply because of the traversal, so it sometimes feels almost pointless when you can disengage from a fight quite easily and just run away. So yeah, do bear that in mind. Those are a few negatives, I would say. Now let's round off on some positives, because we don't want to just say it's all bad, because there's a lot of good things about this game that I do like, and I'm hopeful for this in early access, but a little bit on the skeptical side, I guess you could say. But I really do love the Holobite system, okay? And this is basically where you keep some of your gear, you can add modifications as well as you progress, so it's not a complete reset every single time. So I do like that system where it's not just gear that you're gathering and you just feel overpowered in certain runs. You know, it is kind of old school in that approach, and I just think that's quite a cool system, having a kind of modifier. Also, the day and night cycle, I just want to highlight how cool that gets. For nighttime, enemies are a lot more dangerous, even areas of the map become a lot more hostile, and you know, they're just not safe to traverse anymore, and I really do like that kind of pressure of ramping things up. So that is my Hyper Light Breaker review, the Hyper Light Breaker early access review, everything that I've seen so far, just, you know, hopefully to help you out to find out, is Hyper Light Breaker worth it? Should you play it or not? I hope this video helps you, because it is important to cover these games early, because a lot of the times we are sold on lies, so it's important to actually do the research yourself, and I hope this video was informative. So thank you for watching, my wonderful Wise Ones, and any new gamers here, please join the Wise One community if you want to think about things analytically. OG YouTube, like I said, and you like analytical reviews with philosophical elements, I blend them together, so do subscribe to the channel if you are new, and yeah, just thanks for watching, anyone. It really does mean the world to me. If you did enjoy this, please do give the video a like, because it does help out. Consider checking out my music on Spotify. I make electronic music on Spotify. And maybe even consider helping out an independent channel by dropping a small donation or a thanks. That would be very, very awesome of you. But to my returning Wise Ones and any new people considering joining this community, just thank you so much. Just know it means a lot to me. I'm really going to try and make this year a great year for my channel and gaming content and philosophical videos. If you really do love looking at things in detail, you know, analyzing everything, because I'm crazy, that's just what I do, join the channel, because there's a ton of great content coming with a lot of detail in them, where we can analyze media, gaming, and just life in general. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Peace out.